All right, what is going on, guys? Scars here, or Brian, whatever you like to call me. And today I'm, of course, just chilling over here at my condo. Pretty cloudy day. You guys can see in the video here. This is how it's been for the last, week, 2 weeks here in Bacolod and probably around the Visayas region and most of the Philippines because, as always, it's still rainy season. So I got a lot of rain, storms, and whatnot, but kind of a beautiful view too when you get to live up here in a higher floor. You really get this nice, beautiful view of the surrounding areas. And what I love about Bacolod as well is you just have these huge mountains off in the distance, and I don't know, it just looks really nice with all the rain clouds and everything going on. But guys, today I'm making a video about something that I think is really important for those of you guys who are living out here in the Philippines. And it's just the truth about being here long term. A lot of guys will sometimes come out here for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, and, they kind of get this telescopic perspective of what it's like to be out here. Maybe they have their hotels booked or their Airbnbs booked for the month, and they're talking about how cheap everything is and how affordable it is. And if we're comparing it back to the West, in my case from the US, absolutely. Much, much cheaper in the Philippines, certainly. But if we're talking about long term, meaning that you're going to be an expat here at least 6 months plus, you have to really start taking into consideration, is it really as cheap as you think it is? Now, I just want to preface here by saying that, as I've always mentioned before in any interview I've done, as of right now in 2025, I think as a single guy, no wife, no kids, I think $1,600 US per month, consistent month-to-month income is kind of the gold standard right now. And this kind of gives you, as I've mentioned before, maybe a $400 or $500 apartment, or condominium, $100 to $150 for your utilities. So, you're still looking at, maybe $200-$300 for your groceries, depending on how often you want to go out or if you want to eat locally. There's a lot of variables that you have to take into consideration there. But even then, you're still looking at just under $1,000 for most of the main ticket items. And then that gives you another $500-$600 to kind of play around with, put a little bit in savings. So if you can make around that amount here in the Philippines, you can live a pretty comfortable life. It's no surprise, as I've told you guys before, I used to live on an $800 to $1,000 budget, but it's just totally not recommended as of now. And I really, really need to emphasize that if you're going to be here long term, that $1,600 is a really great starting point to live a much more comfortable life here. And this is coming from someone who's been here a year and a half now in the Philippines. I can definitely say that is much more viable to live off of that amount. Now, when it comes to, not just the cost of living here, but the visas and long-term stays, that's one attractive reason a lot of people do like to stay here, here in the Philippines. Now, obviously, you're going to have to take quite a bit of visits over to the Bureau of Immigration. Once every 2 months or so, you need to take a trip over there. I think you can extend it online, but it doesn't always work. There's, it is what it is. There's always something going on with governmental services here when you need to process something. But certainly extending your visa is no exception. So I just usually go the easy route for me, and I just go to my local Bureau of Immigration office. But I have to say, we're very lucky as a tourist, as of right now anyways, and it hasn't changed for years, but you can stay here consecutively in the Philippines for 36 months. I mean, that's about as good as it gets. You really don't find a better deal than that. Cultural differences, as I've said many times before, obviously one of the biggest advantages being here is you can utilize English with most people. Even out in the province, man, I could always find someone I could have a pretty good, consistent conversation with in English language. So that's not a huge, cultural difference for me. But I will say, and as I've said many times before, if you don't have a sense of patience in the Philippines, you will struggle. You may struggle with the Filipino time, as I've called it, which is just kind of this idea that, when you need to get something done fast, it doesn't really work like that here in the Philippines. Things do take time. And again, whether that's governmental services needing to get your Bureau of Immigration visa extended, whether you're at the grocery store, you're waiting in a long line and the cashier has to take someone's fruit that they didn't go weigh, and they have to go all the way out of their way to get it weighed and put a sticker on it. It's just little things that start adding up over time, and it really, really, I can't emphasize this enough. It really will test your patience. So Filipino time is very real. Indirect communication. A lot of Filipinos don't always directly communicate exactly what they need to you, and it's not necessarily because of a language barrier, although that can play a role in some ways. But it's just more that they're going to tell you something, but it's not directly communicated, and that can also be dangerous because if we're talking about setting up a phone plan or setting up internet or setting up a bank account, if you're misunderstanding what they're trying to tell you, then that can obviously create some headaches later on. So it's always good, in general, as a general rule of thumb, ask questions. If you're not understanding something, clarify again, clarify 3 times, even if it seems annoying. As long as you are able to understand what's being said, that's the most important thing. And of course, loud neighborhoods too. Some of us are from countries where we're going to be in cities that have loud neighborhoods. But here in the Philippines, I'm telling you, man, noise is huge here. There is a lot of noise. Even as I'm recording this, you guys might hear a little bit of traffic outside of my condo, and I'm all the way up here on the 10th floor. So yeah, you will definitely hear lots of noise outside, whether it's the roosters, whether it's the jeepneys, the horns of cars beeping all day. You're going to hear so many different noises here in the Philippines. So definitely be prepared for that as a long-term expat. Healthcare insurance, I don't have so much experience with this, but I will say that if we're going to go back into your budget as well, this is something you really need to take into consideration, and why the Philippines can definitely not be the cheapest option depending on how much money you're coming here with. $1,600 is that general rule of thumb as a single person, no kids, no wife. But if you do want to get regular health care here or set up an insurance plan, I would definitely recommend you're going to be more on that $2,000 budget. As I'm recording this, I'm 29. I'm about to turn 30 here in 3 weeks, which I have like my own midlife crisis, which I know some of you guys watching are going to be like, man, you're too young. Why the hell are you complaining? But, I will say, though, that because of my younger age, I have taken the risk not to have any kind of insurance here. But I will say healthcare is definitely cheaper here. I think I went to get an EKG, chest x-ray, some blood work done, a CBC, complete blood count. And man, it cost me like $40, I think, for everything. And I got my results back the next day. Definitely much cheaper than back in the States. You're never going to find that kind of price there. But again, if you need regular medical treatment, especially if you need medications that are, not available here, you have to get it overseas, whatever. That might create a lot of problems. So that's something you guys should take into consideration. And also, healthcare in the Philippines isn't the greatest as well. If you need something serious done, like a serious operation, cancer treatment, dialysis, whatever, maybe it's best if you get that stuff done in the West. And in some cases, maybe it's just not a good idea to come to the Philippines long term as an expat if you're going to need a lot of major healthcare. One of the biggest things here in the Philippines as a long-term expat that makes or breaks people is infrastructure. A lot of people here in the Philippines, live in very poor conditions, unfortunately. It's the reality of the economy, and it's just the reality of the poverty here. A lot of people live in very poorly made homes, unfortunately. And even as an expat here, if you're going to live in a condominium, you're going to notice a lot of condos, with the exception of maybe very new modern places in like BGC or IT Park, in Cebu City, Manila, whatever, BGC, Makati, those are much more modern areas. But outside of that, very different. I mean, the infrastructure is very, in my opinion, underdeveloped, especially in comparison to the other Southeast Asian neighbors. So that is something that will definitely be very different, and also a cultural difference, certainly. So expect stuff like that. Power outages. So for any of you guys who are digital nomads, that is a very real possibility of something that may happen. So, in the likely event that your power goes out, it's a good idea to have a generator or have a hotspot connection, have your cellular data connected, especially if you're working online on a regular basis like I used to. I worked every single day, actually. So that was something that was very important to me, was having good internet. But unfortunately, in the Philippines, that can be something that's very tricky, is having good infrastructure and internet. That and just older, infrastructure, things that don't make sense, like tight spaces in the bathroom, poorly designed cabinets, things of that nature. I'm very lucky in the condo I live in right now, which if you guys haven't seen the video of a little tour of my condo, check it out. I'll put it in the description below. But this place is much closer to a westernized style condo. And that was intentional from the guy who actually created it. But the majority of condominiums, with the exception of some of the modern ones, as I mentioned, Makati, BGC, or IT Park, it's going to be definitely very different infrastructurally. And that's one of the biggest ones for a lot of long-term expats, is can they adjust to that different type of infrastructure, or lack of certain conveniences, or, things that just don't make sense, when it comes to spacing in their condo or apartment. So definitely do your research, guys. If you're looking for an apartment or condo, get on the Facebook, pages. Take a look at a few, talk to the owners, see it in person, and that's the only way you're going to know if you'll actually like it or not. And of course, one of the biggest ones for me, as well as the lifestyle and community as well. And I'm not just talking about, the big expat communities. I'm not talking about like Cebu, Dumaguete, Angeles, Manila, whatever. But even here in the smaller cities, like here in Bacolod, where I'm currently recording this. If you have this sense of wanting a connection back to the West, which when you live here longer term, it is nice sometimes to be able to talk to an American or talk to someone back in the West that can have a little bit more sense of familiarity, and can communicate in a more proper way with you. But in the smaller cities, that can be a little bit more tricky because it's harder to find those kind of expat communities. I found that the expat community here in Bacolod, which is still small, but I found it is very friendly, actually. And I think that it's mostly because there isn't a lot of expats here. So for me, it's kind of nice to be able to communicate with a few, people back home. Me personally, I'm much more inclined to speak with locals because that's why I came to the Philippines. But again, when you're here over a year, especially, it is nice sometimes to be able to talk to someone back home, and refreshing. And it kind of feels like you're kind of taking a load off your chest, being able to actually say the things you really want to say to somebody, and someone can actually understand in deep conversation and much more fluent detail of the things you want to say. When you're trying to talk to a Filipino, obviously that's when there's going to be a bit more of a language barrier when you're trying to have really deep conversation. So it's kind of nice sometimes to be able to reach out to someone from back in your home country, and makes you feel a little bit more connected, especially. But especially if you're going to live in the province, in the rural areas, that's something that's going to be a lot harder to do. And so for some guys, that kind of breaks them. They think, the province life is too quiet, I feel too bored, I need to get back in the city. And so that's why some guys will do that. So all this to say, guys, that hopefully, you could take away some points here of what it's like to live here long term. And for a lot of guys, as I said, some guys really just don't have a lot of patience to be here. And so Southeast Asia in general will definitely test your patience, but the Philippines particularly, I think, really absolutely tests your patience. If we're looking at neighboring countries like Vietnam or Thailand, obviously they have a lot better bang for your buck in general, especially for infrastructure, And then also, I think things just work more systematically in those countries compared to here. So definitely the Philippines will test your patience. And I really do want to emphasize that for me, there's a lot more positives than negatives here, which is why I stay here in the Philippines. I love the people. I love the culture. The weather is always beautiful. So many islands to go visit. But there is always going to be the things that will challenge you on a day-to-day basis. And when you're living here long-term, you're not just staying here a month, to have this beautiful beach vacation, but you really get to see the inner workings of what it's like to live here day to day, the good and bad and the ugly in some cases. These are good things to talk about, and I really do encourage you guys who want to live here long term, take these points into consideration. If any of you guys who are living here long term as an expat have any advice you want to provide, I'd love you guys to leave that in the comments below. And otherwise, just going to be relaxing here today. Another rainy day outside, and hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you leave a like if you did, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next video.